Hitting record. Let me share my screen. All right, so welcome to the junior class college meeting. Hopefully you've been thinking about college and doing some stuff along the way, and I know you have, but this is kind of our first official launch. We had a meeting back in September that if you missed that, it's recorded and it's on the website. But the first thing I want you to know are these two quotes. Keep it in mind, where you go to college is not who you'll be. And college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. So don't think of this as, you know, I'm somehow trying to win some contest. What you're trying to do is make a great match for yourself and end up somewhere after ASPA that's a really great place for you. So how do you do that? The first thing you need to be doing this year is making a college list. I'm sure many of you, I know I've talked to some of you, you're already in the process of doing this, but that's what you should be doing right now, is having a really big college list. Lots of different options, lots of different things. If you are a creative person, if you're a visual person, I mean, you might want to draw your ideal college. Start with what you want in a college. If you're a writer or you're more left-brained, make a list of what you want. If you're a computer person, do a spreadsheet. But whatever you do, start with whatever it is that you want in a college and where you envision yourself. What would be your perfect ideal college? Start with that. You want to ask yourself a couple of basic questions. What do I want in a college? What problems do I want to solve? What education, training, experiences would help me accomplish my goals? In what kind of place would I thrive? Are you looking for another ASPA? Are you looking for a very different place? Something in between? What can my family afford for higher education, and how can I find the resources to help? So start with those questions. And what you want to do is make your own college rankings. So don't go looking for US News and World Report. They're stupid. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Make your own rankings, stick to those. You want to hold on to your own list of criteria and return to it periodically through the whole process to help you ground your search in your values, not somebody else's. And it should be that your list looks different than your friends. You should have a different looking list of criteria if you're looking for. You may have certain things that you share in common with your friends, but if you're doing this right, this is going to be a unique list to you. So right now, like I said, you should be creating a big list of potential colleges for you. Between now and the spring and the summer, you're going to be whittling that down. You want to make it a smaller list. But right now, you should have a really big honking list. By the time August starts, when we get back to school, you should have your list of colleges that you plan to apply to. So you need to narrow it down to a much lower number. And that list has to include, not now, but in the end, your list really has to include at least one foundation school, which is a school where we know you'll get in, and a financial safety school, which means you know that you can afford that school. It may be the same school. Ideally, that's how it works. You'll have at least one foundation that's also a financial safety. But everything else can be dream schools. Everything else can be good matches. So big list now, small list by the time you get to August. Now, some of you are sitting there going, yeah, whatever, Ms. Retzky, I want to go to a good college. Well, let me start with this. It's actually harder to get into college today, or people will tell you that. It's harder to get into college today than it was when I was a student or when your parents were students. First of all, that's really not the case, okay? Right now, the number of high school seniors is actually decreasing, and it has been decreasing for the past couple of years, especially in the Northeast and the Midwest of the United States. This year especially, applications are down for most colleges. The vast majority of colleges have fewer students applying. And most colleges are having to work harder to get students into their schools. So they're hungry for you, the buyer's market. What is happening though is that the number of applications to highly selective colleges is increasing, meaning they're taking a smaller percentage than ever before. At least that's what we've been seeing over the past, say, 10 years, and at least in the early decision round in the fall, we saw a big increase with highly selective colleges. I don't know that that's going to be the case with the regular admission season. We haven't seen those numbers yet, but just in the process of this, understand that it's a very small number of colleges that are highly selective, that take like 30% or fewer. The vast majority of colleges out there accept a lot more, closer to 70%. And those schools, most schools out there are looking for students. So it's not harder actually to get into college today. It's easier. Now, if somebody does come to me and say, well, I really want to go to a good college, my question right back to them is always, well, what exactly do you mean by a good college? Then you need to think about, if you come back, a lot of students will come back to me and say, well, I want it to be highly ranked, or I want it to be really selective. You need to know that college rankings are often manipulated. There have been, I say several here, it's actually many instances of colleges using fraudulent data to manipulate where they stand in the US News and World Report rankings. I can give you lots and lots of examples. Contact me after the presentation, we'll get to it. There are also so many different rankings out there that they've almost become meaningless. I mean, you can find a ranking for everything. Best frozen yogurt, best party school, whatever. That's not to say that all of the rankings are useless, but there's just so many of them. You need to focus on something, if frozen yogurt really matters to you, then yeah, you want to look at the frozen yogurt ranking list. But if you're just looking for, if you're looking again at US News and World Report, that's basically a popularity contest. It's better to create your own ranking. Find colleges that fit the criteria that are most important to you. The other thing to keep in mind, and I know this is not going to sound like anything that you're probably hearing in the headlines or that most people have told you, but I swear to you, the prestige of a college does not equal your success. There have been multiple research studies that have shown that the selectivity of a college has no or minimal effect on most student graduates' happiness and success. There is research that shows that it can be somewhat helpful for minority students, low-income students, and students whose parents don't have a college degree. In that case, the selectivity can have some positive effects. But for most people, it really doesn't have any effect at all. A stronger predictor of students' income, of graduates' income, is the caliber of the schools where the students apply. Not where they go, but the types of schools that they're looking at and applying to. So there's actually several studies that have shown that students who applied to several elite colleges but did not attend them were actually more likely to earn high incomes later than students who actually attended the elite schools. I know, it doesn't sound reasonable, but there's research to show this. What it comes down to is that your motivation and your ambition have a much stronger effect on your subsequent success than where it is you go to college. In other words, it's what you do at college that matters more than the college you attend. So let that one sink in. The other thing to keep in mind is one college is not right for everyone, okay? What is a great college for you may not be a great college for your friend or for somebody down the hall. It really has to be a match that you're making. You're finding something individual to you. And you have to also keep in mind, it's not just one college out there for you. There are probably several colleges, maybe many colleges, where you would be equally happy and successful. So what we're trying to do is find a range of schools that would make you happy, that would be a good fit for you. And you want to keep an open mind, because what may turn out to be one of the best colleges for you may actually be a college you haven't heard of yet. So keep an open mind. I'm going to send this presentation out later, so I should have told you don't have to take notes. But if you're interested in the research, this is a link to a couple of the research articles, and I can give you more. So I just have this if you wanted to check it later on. And you can see, the research has been published in real places like The Atlantic, the Wall Street Journal. It's not fluffy places that are publishing these articles. All right, so let's get down to brass tacks. How do I actually do this? How are we going to get to this whole college admissions thing? The first thing that you should be thinking about, the first thing is the college list. We'll talk about that later. The college list you should be working on. The second thing that you should be working on, literally the minute you get out of this meeting, I want you to start thinking about this. And I've got stuff on Google Classroom that is publishing, I think it published at 6:30, so you can come back and look at this. I want you to do these 4 things. For me to write a letter of recommendation for all of you, and that's what happens. I write your school letter of recommendation to colleges. So if you have a college that requires a school letter or a counselor letter, I'm writing that for you. And the way I do that is to get to know you through a couple of different means. One is a student brag form on SCORE. So you log into SCORE, you fill it out, it's a survey. The next thing is you all have to meet with me by Zoom. Some of you have already done that. I require one meeting. You can have more than that. I'm happy to meet with you multiple times, but at least one meeting. You need to do a resume, and I'll do a second presentation on that. I usually do it during Mr. Slatton's class, but because English classes, really all classes have such little time right now, we didn't want to take more instructional time, so I'll do another presentation probably next week about resumes. You can look at that. And then the last thing for me to write a letter of recommendation form for you is I need something called a teacher insights form. And that's just a survey that you'll ask one teacher, any teacher of your choice, to fill out a teacher insight form and send it to me about you. So those 4 things are what you need to do. And I need them by Friday, March 19th. So you've got about 2 months to do that. Bonus points if you start earlier. And do start earlier, especially on meeting with me, because what happens is every year people are like, oh yeah, I'll get to that. That's before spring break. I'll get to that. And then like the 2 weeks before spring break, everybody's trying to meet with me and there isn't enough time. So let's spread this out. You can just get online. I've got a link for you to do it. And you can schedule your meeting for what works with you. But try to schedule earlier rather than later so we can get you all in. Optional but recommended. Your parents can meet with me and you at the same time. So we can have a family meeting if they're interested in doing that, and if you're interested in doing that. There's a parent brag form that they can do on SCORE. They have to actually log in their parent account to do it. And then there's a career assessment on SCORE that most of you did last year as sophomores, so you might want to return to that. Or if you didn't do it, this is a good time to do it because it'll give you good career information. Maybe you're not quite sure what you're majoring in or you're looking for other options. So those are totally optional. The reason I require the first 4, just to let you know, is because I write really detailed letters of recommendation, and I end up honestly sounding like I've known you for years. I want to sound like your BFF. So for me to do that, some of you I've already interacted with, but not all of you. So I need to get to know more about you. And the more information you give me in that process, the better my letter is. So think of it not as a burden, but as a way to help yourself. Help me help you, because I want you to look good. My letters are always very positive and trying to point out the best things about you to a college. And the only way I can do that is if you give me that material. So what you need to think about is what kind of recommendation do you want from me? If you want a detailed, strong letter, you need to do those 4 tasks by Friday, March 19th. And the reason is because I have to get started writing in the spring. There's like 75 of you and only 1 of me. That's a lot of letters to write, and it takes me time. And in all honesty, I write my best letters in the spring and the summer because I've got lots of time. There's no time pressure. The birds are singing, the sun is shining, I'm happy. If you were to wait past that deadline, or as some students have done, and I don't advise this, push it to next fall, then things get very stressful, and there's lots of deadlines, and there's lots of time pressure, and you're all trying to apply, and we're all trying to do paperwork, and it's just not a good thing. Don't make me write your letter of recommendation in the fall. Give me the materials by March 19th, and I will write you a much better letter of recommendation, and a much more specific one. So just to quickly give you a glance, this is what a detailed, strong letter looks like. We can get it to open. You won't have time to read this, but you can come back on Google Classroom and take a look. See, it's nice and detailed. It's long. It's like a 6-paragraph.
We don't see it.
You don't see it? Oh.
I think you'd have to represent for us to see it. Okay.
Well, you can come back and look at it later. I'll just describe it. It's long. It's like 7 paragraphs. It says great things about the student. If you don't make that deadline, what you might get is a bare bones weak letter. And that letter is, I guess you can't see that either, but when you do get a chance to look at it, it's like 3 paragraphs, and it says boring things like, so-and-so is a visual arts senior in good standing at the Alabama School of Fine Arts. So-and-so has maintained a 3-point whatever GPA while taking some challenging courses. Blah, blah. It's very boring. It's very basic. It doesn't give anything about the student or the student's personality, because I can't do that if you don't give me the material. So when you get a chance, look at those 2 types of letters, think about what you want. Hopefully you're going to say, yes, I want the detailed, strong letter, and you'll get everything done by Friday, March 19th, or earlier. Bonus points if it's earlier. All right, so college admissions timeline. You won't be able to see this either because I think my links aren't working, but you'll get this on Google Classroom you can see the 11th grade college planning calendar. I may have even sent this out earlier. It's on the website, but I'll send it out. It's a very detailed month by month what you should be doing. You need to read your email and Google Classroom notifications every day for important updates. I know you're getting inundated by stuff. You guys hate email. You hate it. You don't want to read it anymore. Sorry. It's the only way I can get through. So just keep up with that stuff. And know that colleges especially only use email. So if you're not checking your email every single day from here on out, you might miss something really important. So get in the habit of doing that. And next year, you'll have a 12th grade college planning calendar. I'll get that to you before 12th grade, or you can go look at the one on the website and get a sense of what you're going to be doing next year. All right, so there are 3 required tools that we use here at ASPA, and I've talked about a few of them, but I'll just go through all of them here. One is Remind. If you have not done this, I asked you to do this last year, and a lot of you did, but if you didn't do it or you're not sure if you did it, pull out your phone now and follow these instructions. I'll give you a minute to do it. The top is if you have a smartphone, which probably most of you do. The bottom is, or if you just don't want to bother with that, you can just text at 22F9FC to the number 81010. If you did it last year, it's probably just going to say you're already registered. And I think when I looked, something like 60 of you had already registered last year, so there were only 15 or so of you that still needed to do that. And what this is have you used Remind for other classes or other things? I'm seeing a few nods. Okay, so it's just a way of, it'll either text you, or if you have the Remind app on your phone, it'll send you messages through that app. So that when I have time-sensitive stuff, you know, let's say I have a scholarship that I need you to come sign really fast that day, I'll send you a message through Remind. So it's really only for time-sensitive stuff. I promise I won't spam you. Ask the seniors. I only send important stuff out. All right. Go ahead and move on here. Again, I'm going to put this presentation up on Google Classroom so you can come back through it later if you haven't had a chance or if you need more time. All right, so the other thing is, you remember this probably from last year, those of you who were here, there's a few new juniors. SCORE. This is a program that you can use to research colleges now, and next year you'll use it to actually request transcripts and other documents to be sent to colleges and to keep track of your college applications. So for right now, just make sure you're registered on SCORE. Again, if you were here last year, you should have already registered when you were a sophomore. If you are new to ASPA, I sent out an invitation to SCORE that hopefully you've seen. If you didn't get it, I'll send it out again. But go ahead and register with SCORE so you can use it. And one thing that's kind of nice is if you don't like the ASPA email, you can add an alternate email to it on your own. I'm not going to take the time to do this, but there are some really good video introductions for students and parents on how to use SCORE. And I should, for parents who are on this meeting, there are also parent SCORE accounts, and I will send an invitation and I'll leave a note for myself now to send another invitation out. We sent the invitations last year, but I'll send it out again tonight when I get off. And what that does is let you use SCORE as well, and you can do things like research colleges, add colleges to your students list, suggest them. You can fill out the parent survey in SCORE, things like that. It's a really helpful tool. So you can come back and use those help documents if you want. They're good little videos. The other tool that we all have to use, like I said, is email. It's the official means of communication regarding college admissions at ASPA. And again, most colleges and most scholarship programs today use email. So you really have to use it as a business tool. Check it daily. I think I missed something. Oh, well, we'll come back to it. Oh, Google Classroom. You're all on that. I use Google Classroom, and I'll be using it more and more. So check the notifications there, too. Now, enough about you. Now let's talk about colleges. What do colleges want? How do they make decisions? We talked a little bit about this last year, but I'll just do a quick review. If we're talking about academic colleges, or I'll refer to them as regular colleges, you know, like Birmingham Southern, UAB, Harvard, Rhodes College, Notre Dame, all those kinds of places, Smith College, Howard. They look at the top 3 things in red as the most important things when you apply. And all 3 of them are equally important. They look at your academic courses, the classes you're taking, and how rigorous they are. They look at your grades in those courses. And if, this is the big if you submit testing, and if they require testing, they'll look at testing. A lot of colleges, as you may already be aware, have gone test optional because it has been so hard in parts of the country for students to take the ACT or the SAT. So a lot of colleges went test optional or test blind. So that third one is optional in many cases. We can talk a little bit more about that. But for most schools, those are the top 3 things they're looking at. But they don't just care about that. I mean, some places do, like UAB, for example, they really only care about your GPA and if you have a certain test score. That's what, you can get in automatically with a 21 ACT and a 3.0 weighted GPA. That can be, that's just automatic admission to UAB, for example. Same thing with Alabama. But a lot of colleges, and if you decide to apply test optional, they're going to start looking at other things like your specialty work or your artistic talent. Essays, they may require essays for you to write to let the college know a little bit about you. They may ask for recommendations, which are letters from me and or teachers talking about you and your qualities. And then some colleges want to look at other things like your extracurricular activities, geography, meaning where you're from in the country. Your gender may play a role, your race, first generation, meaning you're the first generation in your family to go to college. Your parents did not graduate from a 4-year college. Also legacy status, meaning you're the child of somebody who went and graduated from a college, or the grandchild of somebody who went to a certain college. That makes you a legacy. So all of those factors might be considered by some colleges. And again, if you apply test optional, 4 through 7 suddenly become more important than they did before. Now, if we're talking about art schools and conservatories, it's the exact opposite. In that case, the top 2 things that they're looking at are artistic talent, which they can see through your audition or your portfolio, depending on whether you're a performing artist or a visual artist or a writer. And then your artistic achievements, your performances, awards you may have won, that kind of thing. Special programs you may have attended over the summer. And then they're going to start looking, those are the top 2 things, but they may also look at recommendations, and they care about specialty teachers. They don't care so much about what I have to say. They don't care so much about academic teachers, and they may not even require an academic teacher or a counselor letter. They want to hear from your specialty teachers. They may care about these other factors. Gender, race, things like that could really play a role. And academics might be important. Testing, a school recommendation, they may come into play, but they tend to play a much smaller role when we're talking about art schools and conservatories. However, if you're applying to a conservatory within a university, like the Blair School of Music at Vanderbilt, for example, or a conservatory at Northwestern or Rice, they're going to want your artistic talent, but they also care about your academics because you're going to be a student both in the art school and in the larger university. So just be aware, if you're applying to a conservatory or an art school within a university, the academics do come into play. Okay, most important this year, do your best in school. Keep doing your best. I know it's hard, believe me. I don't know how hard it is because I'm not doing it, but it's important. So do your best to keep up with your classes. Colleges tend to emphasize junior year. Now, it's a little bit different this year because they understand we've had COVID challenges. And so there's some leeway there. But in general, colleges tend to pay more attention to your later grades than they do to your earlier grades. They're going to see your overall GPA and your overall trends, but they tend to pay a little bit more attention to what you're doing this year. But again, we'll explain to them that we're virtual in part way and that's a challenge for a lot of people. So. And there's actually a part on the Common Application, there's a section where you can talk about COVID's effects on you if that has affected your performance. The other thing is, either stay involved in your specialty or get a lot more involved in your specialty and or extracurricular activities. I'm not saying you have to win a Nobel Prize. I'm not saying you have to have a Grammy by the time you're 18. That's unreasonable. But whatever you do, show initiative, show leadership. In whatever way you do, whatever way you can do that for your specialties or your extracurriculars and your activities or through whatever it is you're passionate about, show initiative, show leadership, show that you're growing. You want to ask yourself, are you taking classes that challenge you appropriately? So when you sign up for classes senior year, colleges, often they will make their decisions based on the first 6 semesters of your transcript through the end of junior year, but they will look at what you're taking senior year. So they're going to want, if you're applying to an academic college, they want to see that you're challenging yourself in areas that you're good at. And are you doing as well as you can? So that's not to say you have to run out and take every AP that we offer. That's not what I'm saying. But for example, if you're good in languages and you're in French 3 right now, and you're looking at a highly selective college, you want to think hard about taking AP French next year, for example. Or you might think about taking, AP Economics and Government if you're really good in social studies, that kind of thing. Talk to your teachers, do what you're good at. You don't want to overextend yourself. That's ridiculous because then you won't do well. You don't want to take incredibly difficult courses if that's not your forte in that area. But you want to challenge yourself in the areas that you're good at. The nice thing is for everybody here, specialty, you're all being challenged. You're doing college level work already as juniors and certainly as seniors. So that's something we emphasize to the colleges. So you're already in a position where you are being challenged beyond most high schools. And again, with your specialties, or if you do extracurricular activities, outside activities, look for opportunities where you can be a leader, look where you can initiate some kind of program. Is there some kind of skill that you can develop? And I know it's incredibly hard with everything being virtual. So you've got to be extra creative, but try to do that. What you want to do is basically start thinking ahead to when you apply to college, what is it that you're going to be able to put in front of a college that distinguishes you from all those other teenagers who are applying to the same colleges? What is it that's unique about you? What can you continue to develop so that you look different than those students? One thing you can do is try to aim for what I call non-teenager activities, okay? So you want to be doing interesting things that most people your age are not doing. For example, and these are real examples of what ASPA students have done by the time they apply to college that have really set them apart. They may have done research. They may have published, shown work in a gallery, done a dance intensive with a professional company, acted in a real film or a commercial, interned, started their own business, solved a problem for a nonprofit. Those are just some examples. And there are lots others that you can come up with. But things that your average teenager is not doing, if you're doing those help you stand out. It's not that you have to do that to go to college. It's just if you're really aiming, for a more selective college, or you're trying to get a more selective scholarship, those are some things you can be thinking about. What you shouldn't do, though, is panic. Despite all of the things I'm saying, I know some of you probably are having blood pressure like, oh my God, she wants me to win a Grammy. I don't. Don't panic. It's okay. It will be fine. We will get you to college. Whatever you do, again, don't assume that the college you attend is the most important decision of your entire life. Remind yourself what you do at college matters more than where you go. Don't believe everything people tell you about college. This is a big thing. There's lots of rumors out there. Everybody thinks they're an expert on college. Your neighbors, cousins, grandmother's house cat is going to give you advice and tell you, no, don't go to that college. That's not good. Most people are just amateurs. So just if they give you advice, and you just nod and smile and say, thank you, grandmother's house cat. That's really interesting. I'll take that into consideration. But take it with a grain of salt, okay? Don't believe unsolicited advice. Go to the resources. Don't procrastinate. Don't be lazy. Don't be apathetic. And I know the fact that you're here at this meeting tells me that that's not going to be you. But just stay on top of things. Stay on top of your deadlines. Keep doing what you're already doing, basically. We talked a little bit about SAT and ACT testing. It's a really complicated topic this year. So I'll just try to touch on some of the highlights here. Here's what we know right now about standardized testing. Well, let me pause and say, when we talk about standardized testing, we're talking about the ACT or the SAT, and all colleges accept either one, and they accept them equally. They'll take your highest score on either one. What we know right now about standardized testing is that for our current senior class, not you, but the current seniors, the majority of the colleges in this nation went test optional. And a lot of them are actually test free, meaning they won't even look at your test. Okay? College Board still plans on giving the SAT this spring, and the ACT still plans on giving the ACT this spring. And from what we've seen in Alabama, most of the places that have been giving the test continue to do so. In other parts of the country, a lot of places are canceling those tests, but in Alabama, most places continue to give in-person testing. We'll see if that continues, you know, with the coronavirus raging, but right now that seems to still be the plan. However, the student's GPA and the types of classes that a student takes are mattering more and more to admissions because they've gone test optional. And the relationships that students build with teachers and colleges are mattering more for admissions. Okay? So things are a little bit different, whereas standardized testing was really one of the top three. Now it's taken a less important role if you can't get the test in, or if you're not a good tester, you have a lot more options. What we don't know at this point is how many colleges will stay test optional next year. Right now, it looks like most colleges are probably going to do what they did this year. They'll probably have the same policy next year, but we don't know that. Only a handful of colleges have begun announcing their policies for next year. And I bet a bunch of them will wait until the summer. So don't assume they'll be the same, but it looks like a lot of them will be. And a lot of this depends on, are there seats available at ACT and SAT testing sites around the country? So are other places around the country offering the SAT and the ACT? If they continue to cancel them, kids can't, you know, there are kids in other parts of the country that can't get any of the tests at all, can't even get one ACT in. So just be aware that's going to affect what happens next year. There's a lot we don't know. When we're talking about test optional colleges, what that means is exactly what it sounds like. It means if you want to, and if you have a test and you think it's good, you can present that as part of your application. If a college is test blind, it actually means they won't look at tests at all. Even if you submit them, they don't consider them. Most colleges this year are test optional. Just a handful are test blind. If you're interested in finding out which colleges are test optional, you can either look at your college's websites or go to fairtest.org, and you can find a list of all the colleges and their testing policies and figure out which ones are test optional for next year. Do be aware that you still should really check with individual colleges for their details, because there are some holdouts, like for example, the Florida public universities are not test optional. They still require test scores. And some scholarships at the colleges or even outside scholarships may still require test scores. So not everything is test optional necessarily. What the plan is right now, if it continues to be safe, if it is considered safe, the plan is for your class to take the ACT with the writing on March 9th. That's what we are planning to do right now. I haven't heard anything otherwise, and I assume that will happen. One of the things you might think about is, this is totally optional, and it's only if you feel it's safe. You might go ahead and register to take the ACT or the SAT on a national test date on a Saturday, sometime before now in June. So that's just something to think about. In the past, I would say, yeah, you really should do that. This year, because of test optional, it's truly optional. You know, I don't want anyone to feel like they have to risk their lives to take a test, because you don't have to anymore. You really don't. Colleges are not, they're not lying when they say they're test optional. They really are considering students without them. You can get really good test information from this website, compassprep.com. It's got more information than I could possibly go through, and whenever I have a question, that's what I go to. Just this week, we had some changes to the SAT that were announced. SAT subject exams, easy for me to say. SAT subject tests have been eliminated. They are no more. So colleges can no longer require them because they're disappearing. It's made, you can't even register for them anymore. And also the SAT dropped its essay, so you can't take it. Now, ACT still has an essay, and some colleges still require the essay, but not many of them. And my prediction is it probably won't be very long before the ACT also drops its essay, but we haven't heard anything about that yet. So that's just my prediction. The one thing you should think about, especially at least for that March 9th test that you're all going to be taking, do some test prep. It really works. You wouldn't go into an audition without practicing. That would be crazy. You wouldn't go into any other kind of a test here at ASPA without studying. So do some test prep, get familiar with the ACT. You can do that at ACT Academy. You can do it at Khan Academy. Khan is geared for the SAT, but I promise you, any kind of prep you do for the SAT will help you on the ACT as well. And if you go on our SAT and ACT webpage, I've got a list of test prep resources as well. Also, they were emailed out with the email this past week about the PSAT. There was some test prep resources. So do some test prep, get familiar with it before you go and take the test. It'll help. Just quickly, these are some of the fees for the ACT and SAT. They're pretty similar. The only big difference is that ACT, you can take it with writing for $70, whereas SAT, which no longer has writing, is $52. The main thing I want you to know here, a couple of things, is with each of these tests, when you register, these are for the national test dates. Actually, it'll count for the March 9th one as well. You can actually send up to 4 score reports to colleges without a fee. So as part of taking the test, as part of paying your fee, you can send 4 score reports out if you want to. You have to register for those before you take the test, though. After you've taken the test, if you decide you want to send a score report, you get to pay $12 or $13 for the privilege of sending your test reports to colleges. So just be aware, this is the little racket that the colleges have. They want to make more money. The one thing I really want you to know, though, is any student who qualifies for free or reduced lunch at ASPA also qualifies for fee waivers both for testing and college applications. So if you think there's a possibility that you might qualify for free or reduced lunch, go ahead and apply through the cafeteria. Find out if you are eligible, because if you are, then you can get your testing done and you can apply to colleges for free. So that can really save you a lot of money. All right, so you probably know the answer to this. Is there one perfect college for every student? Obviously not. We want you to keep your colleges open. There are many, many excellent colleges and universities around the country. There are probably, again, several colleges where you would be equally happy and successful, not just one. Keep an open mind. A great college for you may be one that you haven't heard of yet. Here's where you can search for some colleges. SCORE and a bunch of other college search websites that I've got listed here. I'll send those out for you to play with. And you should be exploring those. If you haven't already, go ahead and explore those, trying to get your big list together to give yourself some options. When you're researching colleges, college websites are going to be really important to you, especially since many colleges are not open to visitors right now. They may not have college tours, campus tours for you to take. So think about doing college tours online. Do the virtual information sessions. At this point, every college out there has a campus tour that's online. Every college out there is doing information sessions several times a week, usually every day. So there's no excuse for not knowing about, if you have a school that you're interested in, there's no excuse for not learning more about it. You can just sign up for one of their information sessions online. Take advantage of that. Niche.com and Unigo.com are 2 good websites for kind of getting information from other students or from alumni about colleges. It's kind of like a crowdsourcing way of getting to know schools. If you feel it's safe, you might think about in-person campus tours, but again, only if you think it's safe. And if you do decide to go on a campus tour, be sure you schedule it ahead of time and go through the admissions office. Don't just show up on the campus and walk around yourself. Even if you have a friend who's willing to show you around, go through the admissions office, because some colleges actually track whether you're showing interest in them. It's called demonstrated interest. And so you want basically the brownie points for having visited the college and taken the official tour. So go through the admissions office if the college that you're looking at tracks demonstrated interest. Also, you may just learn more. There are tour guides at the admissions office that are specially trained about a whole lot of things at the college that your friend may not know. When you're doing college tours, whether they're virtual or in person, you can actually ask the colleges to speak to someone in your area of interest. So some examples here: if you're a music student, ask to do a private lesson with the teachers that you might be studying with in college. They should be willing to let you do that. Other students, you might talk to the Career Center. If you have a learning difference, talk to student support services. Get a sense of what services are available. Whatever it is that's important to you right now, you can talk to the college and say, hey, I want to talk to somebody in pre-med advising. I want to talk to somebody in pre-law, whatever it is you're thinking about. I want you to know it is not all doom and gloom. There are many, many, many excellent colleges and universities. I've said that a bunch of times. That's because it's true. That's why I'm repeating it. 70% is the average acceptance rate among all colleges. Most colleges are taking about 70% of the students who apply. The frenzy and the news headlines are just, they're revolving around a few dozen colleges that are highly selective. It's a minority of schools that are that selective, not the general representation. And 75% of students report being admitted to their first choice college overall. The vast majority of students end up loving their college, even though it may not have been their first choice during their search. So keep an open mind. All right, I don't know why I said we're here to help. I'm here to help. That's my contact information. And you know how to reach me. Again, after this presentation, at some point, go on Google Classroom, and I've got a link there for you to sign up to have a meeting with me, and you can ask all the questions you want on your own. Stop sharing here. Go back to here. And now, if I can figure out how to turn on the chat, that I can't now. Yeah, probably I can turn it on. So what we'll do is I need you, if you have a question for me, just unmute or raise your hand. Looks like Kinsley Jai Pruitt.
Yes. Yeah.
If I'm
Okay.
pronouncing it, tell me, sorry.
Yeah, Kinsley J. You said it right, I think. So after we've gotten our big list and then we start like cutting people, what do you think would be like the roundabout number of how many colleges we should have once we're finished cutting them?
That is such a hard question because it's very individual. I can tell you the average ASPA student, when I looked at it this year, it looks like the average student is applying to about 5 or 6. So that's the average ASPA student. We've got some who've applied to more than that, some who apply to just one. You know, they know that they want to go to one school and they know they can get in. So that's I would say the upper limit should be about 10. If you get past 10 schools, it gets really confusing and it's hard to keep track of. So if you can, try to keep it under 10 and just know that the average is 5 or 6. But it really, as long as you've got one rock solid safety school that you know you can get into and you know you can afford, you can have as few or as many colleges as you want. So it's really individual. What else are you wondering?
Thank you. Sorry, everyone kind of froze for a minute.
Sorry. Just unmute yourself and ask questions if you have them. We'll figure it out. Ife?
So my question is, if you want to go to multiple colleges that are near each other, are there colleges that are going to allow that?
There are actually some colleges that do that. It's called cross-registration, where they may be part of what's called a consortium of colleges. So, for example, in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania, Swarthmore, and there's another school that's I'm blanking on right now. And I think the University of the Arts all will let you take classes at the other ones. In Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts, there's a group of schools called the 5 colleges. Amherst, the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, Smith, Mount Holyoke, and one other that I'm forgetting. I don't know why I'm forgetting it. But all of those schools, you can take classes at all 5 of those colleges, and that's fine. So it's up to the college. If a college is part of a consortium or it has like a cross-registration agreement, you can do that. If they don't, then what you'd end up having to do is like take a semester off, not semester off, but do a semester away from that college and go to a different college and then come back to your original college. Does that make sense? Okay. Hey, Faith.
If you don't submit your test scores, is there any like disadvantage? Like,
No.
will they? Okay.
No, for a college that is test optional, or what, again, test blind means they won't even look at your scores. But if they're test optional, they really mean that. They mean that what they're going to do is pay a lot more attention to the rest of your application. So they're really going to look at the courses you take. They're really going to look at the grades in those courses. They're really going to look at your essays, put more information, more emphasis on your recommendation, and look at your activities if that's something that they look at. So they'll pay a lot more attention, and if they have an interview, sometimes there's an interview. So it just means that they're going to put all their emphasis on the other parts of the application. And it's not like they're going to sit there and go, oh, she must have had sucky test scores, that's why she didn't submit. No, it's because so many students around the country can't take tests at all, can't even get an ACT or an SAT in. Or in all honesty, you know, maybe you aren't the best test taker and you are represented much better by your grades or your specialty work or in other cases. So it doesn't disadvantage you in any way. It's just a matter of putting more emphasis on the other things that are important to you. What you want to do, if you're not sure if you want to apply test optional to a school or not, you want to look at the college's middle 50% range, meaning, and all colleges will tell you this, and they'll have it on their website, you can usually find it in SCORE. You want to look at 25th percentile through the 75th percentile of their average scores. If you're in that middle 50% range, if you have taken a test and your scores are there, great. You should go ahead and apply and feel free to take tests, feel free to submit your test scores. If your scores are below, then you probably want to apply test optional. Or if they're on the low side, under 50%, you want to probably go ahead and apply test optional. So, and if you have any trouble figuring that out, I'm happy to help you look up that information. Figure out what the information is. The other thing you can do if you want to, it's totally okay. Like some students are applying test optional and then maybe they try to, we all get vaccinated and it's easy to take tests next year. You can take it, late in the season, you'll be able to take a test and you get a much higher test score. You can then send your test score in and they can then consider it. So it's not like if you apply test optional, they'll never look at your tests. You can still send a test if you get a good test score later in the season. What else are you wondering?
I know. Hi. I know that for a lot of schools in Europe specifically, they ask for, in place of their standardized exams, either SAT subject tests or AP exams. Do you know if they're like just switching? Do you know like if they're also not accepting? I mean, it's not an option to take it. So will they be solely accepting AP tests?
They're going to end up looking at the AP tests or in schools that have IB International Baccalaureate. So for those European those European universities, they always have paid a lot of attention to testing. European universities are very, and the rest of the country, or the rest of the world. I mean, America's the only place where tests are kind of like, we kind of pay attention to them, but we kind of don't. The rest of the world is just obsessed about tests, and how you do on a test is what determines whether you get into a university and what kind of university you get into. So for Europe or a lot of the rest of the world, you definitely are going to have to find a way to take the ACT or the SAT and think very hard about trying to get enough AP exams in to meet their requirements. So yeah, if you're looking at schools abroad, you want to start researching now to figure out what it is they're looking for and make sure you're meeting those requirements. Trisha?
Okay, so I had a question about, like, I've heard the words like early decision and like early acceptance. So I was wondering like what exactly that means and like what's the difference?
Great question. Okay, so let me back up and say most colleges run on what's called regular admission or rolling admission. Regular admission is, say, they're going to have a deadline of, say, January 1st or January 10th. You apply by that date and you'll hear back by March or something like that. Or they'll be rolling, meaning you can apply sort of any time in the fall and on a, like, every 2-week or every month basis, the college will make decisions and they'll get back to you. So for example, like at UAB, you apply to UAB on August 15th, they're going to get back to you probably by September 1st with an admissions decision. That's a rolling, and they'll keep, doing it throughout the season. If you would like to get an earlier answer from a college, you want to look for whether they have early admission or early action, early decision or early action. Both of these are where you apply earlier in the season. So usually sometime in October, sometimes November, but usually somewhere in October or early November, you'll apply, and you'll hear back before winter break with both of them. With early decision, you can only apply to one school early decision. They won't let you apply to others. You can apply to other schools regular decision, but you can only apply to one ED school, one early decision school. And that's because if you get in early decision, what you're saying is, if I get in, I will definitely go to that college. I will withdraw all of my applications. I don't care what happens, and I'm going to that school. So you're putting all your eggs into that basket and making a commitment to that school early. And that, in many cases, gives you a little bit of an advantage. They take a slightly higher percentage than they do in the regular pool. Early action is kind of like that. You still apply early in October or November. You'll hear back before winter break, but with early action, there's no limitations. You can apply to as many early action schools as you want. And you don't have, if you get in early action, you don't make any kind of a commitment. You can continue applying to other schools. You can still wait until May 1st to make up your mind. So early action is kind of the best of all worlds. It doesn't make you make any commitment, but it also doesn't give you the same advantage that early decision does in terms of taking a higher percentage. What some people do, you have to be careful with early decision because it does give you that advantage. You might, have a slightly higher chance of getting into the school if you apply early decision because you're committing to them early. But you're also saying, I'm not going to compare financial aid packages. I'm just going to take whatever it is they offer me basically, and I'm going to go. The one way you can get out of early decision is if the financial aid package they offer you is totally not what you were expecting and it's totally unaffordable for your family. And that's the one way you can get out of early decision. But otherwise, you're committing and saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to that school. So you only want to do early decision if you're truly in love with the college and it's totally your top choice. And you're willing to not compare financial aid package. Does that make sense? Any more questions about it? Because it's not the most clear system. Casey?
Are there any advantages to applying to colleges junior year that allow it?
Most colleges don't let you do that. Most colleges will they require you to finish junior year before you can actually apply. So there are maybe a few out there. There's some, there have been changes this past year in a professional group that I'm in that have given colleges a little bit more leeway. So some of them may be answering a little bit earlier, but in most cases, they're going to make you finish junior year so that you can send a full transcript of all of your freshman, sophomore, and junior grades before they'll make a decision. So they'll let you do it over the summer. But most colleges won't let you apply as a junior. If you find one that lets you do that, you'll have an earlier answer, so you'll know you can go to one college. So that's kind of a nice thing to have in your back pocket. But in most cases, you're going to have to wait at least until the summer to be able to start applying. And a lot of colleges won't even open up their applications until August. So one thing you can be doing if you haven't, you can look at something called the Common Application. You've got senior friends, they're probably using that right now. The Common Application is this one application that you can use and you can apply to something like 600 or 800 different colleges around the country. You don't have to apply to that many. It just means 600 or 800 colleges accept that one application. So you can do one application and it simplifies the process rather than applying to 12 different colleges and doing 12 different applications. So that can make life a little bit easier. So one of the things you could be doing this spring if you wanted to, go ahead and make a Common Application account. Get into it, look at it, see what kinds of questions they ask. You can even start filling it out if you want to. You can't send it as a junior, because like I said, they're going to wait until you finish junior year. And actually the common application rolls over, it changes seasons in August, but you can roll over your account. So if you start entering information, you know, you can do that and have some of it done ahead of time. You can even look at the essays that they require and start looking at some of the questions. They have not announced yet. Common application sometimes changes its essay questions, and we haven't heard what they're going to be for next year. So don't run and write your essay yet. Wait until like March and make sure that they're not going to change their essay questions. But you know, you can at least start looking at the format and some of the information they might want you to fill out. What else? I don't want to keep you here if you're not, you know, I don't want to keep you here any longer than you have to. So if you have questions, I will stay here as long as you want, but if not, you're welcome to go.
When we meet with you, do we need to have anything prepared or like?
No, thank you. That is a great question. I should have said that. Yeah, I don't want this to be stressful at all. So come to me with whatever you have. You know, if you have no idea in the world what you're doing, come to me and we'll talk about that. If you have some ideas in mind, bring those with you know. But anywhere where you are in this process is great as far as I'm concerned. So if you're still at the beginning stages and you're like, I can't believe we're talking about college, how is this happening? That's fine. We'll have a meeting, we'll get started, I'll give you some ideas. You can come back to me later if you want to. Or if you're totally opposite, maybe you already have your college list completely put together and you want to go over it. We can do that too. And I'm also available for career stuff. So if you want to talk about, you know, maybe you don't know what you want to major in college. Maybe you have no clue what you want to do after school. That's fine too. That's totally normal. So wherever you are in the process, I'm happy to do it.
I was wondering if you could help us with like interview processes or interview questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have some sample questions already and information for students who are preparing for interviews that I can share with you. So if you're thinking about that already, drop me an email or remind me at our meeting, you know, just let me know and I'll send that information to you. We can also do practice interviews, and I'm happy to do that as well. I'll warn you though, usually what I try to do is find somebody else to do the interview so that because you kind of know me, I'm somewhat familiar to you. So it's better if we can get an adult, like an alumna of ASPA or a parent to do the interview, just so that you have the experience of talking to a total stranger. And it's honestly more intimidating that way so that you'll feel more prepared when you do the actual interview. But I've got lots of information about interviews. They're becoming, I'd say in general, interviews are becoming less important. In some ways they're easier to do because of Zoom, but at the same time, fewer and fewer colleges are requiring. It's a very small handful of schools that still have college interviews. Anything else? Another thing about the meeting that I wanted to add is when we have our meeting, it's not evaluative. I'm not judging you, truly. You know, it's not like I'm going to sit there and, I mean, I may take notes because I want to get to know you, but I'm not sitting there going, oh, I can't believe this student doesn't know. That's not what I'm doing. I'm here to help. So there's no judgment. Just think of me as, I'm like a phone book. I'm like a resource. You just want to come to me with your questions. And if I don't know, I'll find somebody who does. So, but I don't want you to feel intimidated. Hey, Kinsley J, did you have another question? I saw a hand starting to.
I did. Hi, I'm talking again. Okay, so do you if we have to meet with you one-on-one, is that going to be the same meeting that we have if we bring our parents? Like we meet with you one-on-one, is that going to be the same exact thing repeated, just our parents are going to be there?
I mean, I would say it can be if you want it. So it can be either way. If you want to have one meeting where it's you and your parents and me, that's great. We can do it and we can count that as your official meeting. But if you would rather have a meeting just you on your own and then later have a meeting or at some other point maybe have a meeting with your parents too, you know, so that we can talk about whatever it is they're worried about. We can do 2 totally separate meetings, and it won't be a repeat. You know, I wouldn't think it would be a repeat because usually the parents come in with their own questions. The other thing to know is I don't require a parent or guardian meeting. So if your parents or guardians are not into that or not interested, don't worry about it. That's fine. We don't have to do it. That's just
Got
totally.
you. Got you. Okay, I think I'm done talking. I'm sorry, y'all.
Hey, Max, I saw a hand, but I didn't know. Okay, so you do have a
Oh, I was probably just waving.
Oh, okay. Yifei?
Hello, I'm talking again too. I did a college search this week and I found out that none of the colleges in SCORE matched exactly with what I wanted. So when that happens, how do you sort out your priorities?
That's actually one of those things where probably what I do is I'd suggest another college search. Like I don't know which ones you were using, but I would use like Big Future and see if you get a different result that way. Or maybe, are you saying that like you used another search and the search list it gave you didn't match what you had in SCORE? Is that what you meant?
I did a preference search.
And so what's the problem with the search that you got? I'm not sure I'm understanding.
For almost all of the results I got, it was always missing at least one thing that I really wanted out of my
Okay.
college.
Yeah, that's where you're going to have to be more flexible. You know, it may be that you can't find one college that meets every single criteria you're looking for. And you may have to sit there and take your priorities and go, okay, what's really the most important? Which one could I bump down a little bit? Sometimes you just have to be a little bit more flexible. It's possible though, sometimes, you know, SCORE isn't everything. SCORE may not have all the information. So just because SCORE says a college is missing something, don't assume that's the case. I would still go to the college website or contact an admissions officer there and say, hey, I was doing the search and your college meets all of these other criteria except this one. Is there any chance you have this one? Because it may be that they actually do.
Also, I was going to mention this because of something that you mentioned earlier. This is kind of a thing that I know is a cool thing. There's this group of colleges in Florida. This includes like New College, South Florida, Ringling, that does cross enrollment stuff. So
Yeah,
if anyone's interested
Yeah.
in that, that's something you can look at.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Even here in Birmingham, there's a consortium where if you go to UAB, Birmingham Southern, Samford, Miles College, and one other one, Montevallo, you can actually take classes at any of the other ones. As long as your college, your home college doesn't offer the class, you can take it at any of the other ones. And it's pretty common. A lot of schools out there are part of some kind of a consortium or some kind of cross-registration. It's just a matter of how easy do they make it. But that's a really nice advantage so that you can kind of take your college and expand it and give yourself some more options. All right, I think we're winding down. So going once, going twice. All right, but listen, I really appreciate you being here. I know it's been kind of long. Please schedule a meeting with me if you have any questions about anything I talked about or any of the requirements I'm asking you to do for the letter for me to write. You know, you just want to argue with me like, why do I have to fill out this stupid survey? That's fine, we'll talk about it. So just get in touch with me. And I've got an online scheduler, so you can find a time during the day, hopefully when you have like a star period or lunch or something like that, when we can meet so that you're not missing an actual class. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to hang around in case anyone has any questions.